Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Anthony Bonafide, and I'm really excited to have David Byrne here today and Karen Wong. This event is being brought to you by NYUX in collaboration with the UX Community and Culture Group here at Google. NYUX is an organization that was started not too long ago to bring the UX community together here in New York to learn and be inspired. I do want to invite you all to a reception we're having afterwards. We'll be here for about a half hour after the event. There'll be some drinks and there's some food. With no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Karen and David. Welcome.
Thank you so much for coming out. It's great to be back. Today we're going to talk about a topic that has confounded, that we're both passionate about, which is what is the immersive. So I was trying to think about what was the first moment one might experience immersion. So is that better? Wow, okay, here we go. And so, you know, just this notion of baptism and being dunked. But what I thought we would start here, which is, it's called the Elemental Theory of Presence. And Kent Bai, who's a VR blogger, made up this chart. I think immersive has been so tied with the virtual reality tribes. And certainly, I think in today's presentation, we're interested in a broader spectrum of what immersive can be. But this chart really deals with a lot of the basic, I think, components of what immersion can be. So what he's done is he's split it up into this kind of earth, fire, water scenario. But if we just look at the words, it's this notion of an embodied presence, somehow that you are transformed or that you feel taken somewhere else. The notion of an active presence, that you have some kind of agency. Emotional presence, that you feeling something, maybe it's empathy, distraught. And then a social and mental presence, meaning there's some type of cognition, that you're hopefully gaining some knowledge. So before I ask David what is his most interesting immersive experience of late, so he can kind of think about it, because he didn't know I was going to ask him that. I was going to share with you what my most interesting experience has been in the past couple of years, which is Walter de Maria's lightning fields. What it is it's simply a project that this land artist worked on for almost 15 years before it was even ready to be presented. It's a field of lightning rods. And the notion is that at some point there'll be a rainstorm and then these rods light up. For the most part, people who go visit this, they never see the lightning, but what you see are these stunning steel poles that you literally have to spend a full day, an evening, and then you wake up at dawn and you look at something that is in this majestic field with the mountains behind. It was the first time I had actually seen the Milky Way so present in the evening. And so for me, that was truly an immersive experience. David, what was your favorite immersive experience of late?
So I think thank you for giving me time to think about it. The last thing I did was the Met workout. Do you know about this?
I do. I'm a suspect of it, but go ahead, tell us about it. So the
Met. These choreographers, Monica Bill Barnes and company. It's a very small choreographic company, and a illustrator and writer, Myra Coleman, and some others. They did they might still be running, might have gotten extended. They do a thing at the Met Museum where in the mornings at 8:30 in the morning, you do a kind of work, they lead you in a workout, and they I may have a picture of it somewhere where they, you meet and they're in like sparkly dresses. There's nobody in the museum except you and some of the guards. And it's a group of like 20 people. And they basically just say, follow us, do whatever we do. And they, they're doing jumping jacks, they're doing stretches, they're doing this, and they're running through the galleries. and then they'll stop in front of some work of art and do some kind of stretchy thing, and then run to another work of art, and you go, why did we stop in front of this one? Why are we looking at this? But it just keeps going. They have a guy that goes with them who has a backpack with a little and a laptop where he's playing kind of 80s, or might even be before 80s kind of dance music, like you would get in an exercise class. So there's Bee Gees and stuff like that. Naturally, I talked to them after and he said, you were a full-on participant because I'm singing along with the the exercise stuff. Karen might have some thoughts, but their idea is it's a very, very different way of experiencing a museum, besides being a lot of fun. And I did sweat, but it's a very, very different way of experiencing a museum, going through that way and kind of running and jumping and music pumping and all that kind of stuff. So that was the last thing.
And then the way we made this PowerPoint is we used a Google shared folder. And so both of us were throwing a bunch of images, actually dozens and dozens, and they quickly fell into 4 areas. So we're going to quickly run through them, starting with outdoors.
Okay, I'm going to jump into outdoors stuff because this, the definition of immersive includes kind of social gatherings, outdoors, indoors, wherever. This is a picture that the urban planner, Jan Gehl, based in Copenhagen, but he's been an advisor to New York, Sao Paulo, Melbourne, all cities all over the world. His intervention in this place, this place where all these people are relaxing and meeting and talking and socializing, used to be a parking lot. That used to be a parking area. And simply by saying no more, it's not no more parking area, the shops started putting out tables, and it turns into a gathering place. Simple as that, and people love it. This is the march, Women's March. That was a nice sign about Trump and loves Nickelback. I went there, and it was a fully immersive experience. It was a very, very different experience being there amongst hundreds of thousands of people and watching it on TV or on your device or whatever. It's kind of the thing where the people who went there had this ecstatic, transcendent experience that lasted them, very hopeful, that lasted them for days. LARP. Anybody know about LARPing or participated in LARPing? Yep. Somehow I thought you might have a few people who knew about this. Live action role playing. It's described as an extension or whatever of like Dungeons and Dragons and other kinds of games like that, but played with live people, real people. People kind of be the character. You are the character. Your role is defined, and you have days or whatever to kind of reenact what it is. A lot of times, no surprise, the visual kind of is an extension of Dungeons and Dragons as well, but it's not always. There's a lot of people here. The groups can get very large. They don't always have to do with medieval warfare. This one is a role playing. They're playing the role of Stanford professors. And actually, I made that up. But this is the UK LARP Society, and you can see they're not all. Their age range is all over the map. This is one. I think there's another. Do we have another one? LARP? Yes, this is one. So it's not all medieval. This is Vietnam. You kind of reenact what the Vietnamese call the American War. And now we're going to move. So that is a fully immersive thing. You play the thing. You act it out. You have to stay in character for the whole thing. It's very popular, very, very popular in Scandinavia. Hasn't fully gotten into American culture, but who knows?
It's coming. It's coming. Then we noticed that a lot of our images were in the realm of exhibition making, and so David threw in this image, which is Doug Wheeler at David Zwirner, and he and James Turrell were part of the California kind of light and space movement in the 70s. And what I thought was so interesting as I went back and read some essays that were written about them at the time. And, you know, what they talked about was how, I'm going to get the quote right, so that their medium is not light or new materials or technology, but perception. And with Wheeler, he wanted to reshape and change perception, while Turrell often used the words that he wanted to extend and enhance perception, and that it was this notion of the space between the architecture that they were most interested in. So I thought that was very poetic.
They're really, those guys are really interested in science, neuroscience. Yeah. I've talked to some of them. They're really interested in how the brain perceives things, especially when it misperceives things.
And then, you know, with this notion of, okay, all right, some artists are dealing with the space in between the architecture. Obviously, there are a lot of folks who are using the actual architecture to create some kind of immersion. And this was something you went to, David, the museum.
The design museum up at...
a Museum of Art and Design at MAD.
Yeah. This is...
So what, you stuck your head
Scent.
in those holes?
The show was called Scent. I keep wanting to call it Smell. But it was actually called Scent.
Scent.
And one of the things was you stick your head into these kind of...
orifices.
Yes, and you get, and the smell comes up through the little thing, and you kind of have this one-on-one thing, relationship with the smell.
This one, yes, this was at the new museum, Pip Pilotta wrist. She built this kind of hat structure so that way you could be immersed in these single-channeled videos. And so you were right up there in front of the screen, as well as that there was 2 speakers behind you. I thought it was such a successful way to do it, because oftentimes when you're in museums, you know, the video pieces, they're kind of in the corner, sometimes on the floor, and there's so much ambient noise that there's no way to pay attention to it.
I think it's brilliant because when you stick your head in there, you've made a commitment. You made a commitment to watch that for a certain amount of time instead of just glance at it and walk on.
And here is an exhibition at the Jewish Museum of Mazzone Devere, which is a very famous modernist home in Paris, which you know, you can't really get into. So what they did is they constructed some of the rooms in VR, and it was one of the most elegant presentations I had seen in a while, in terms of, here's this simple stool, it swivels, and you have the goggles, you know, right next to you, and there's no straps. So I thought that was really well done. And then, expanding on this notion of architecture, this was the Teddy Bear Project, built in the new museum, an exhibition and artwork of 3,000 images of people and their teddy bears. And folks would just meander through this set design, essentially, and in many ways it was a very powerful notion about memory. The Draftsman Congress at the museum, I think 4 years ago, about Paul Altheimer. And in this case, the artist built this architecture, which originally was blank, and then he invited the public to leave their mark, until at the very end it became this cacophony of noise, of visual noise, and the show finished by the artist actually cutting up all this, all of the work up, and then giving it back to the public for free. We saw Manifesto. What did you think of Manifesto at the Park Armory, David?
I was surprised how much I liked it. It was really beautifully done. This was Kate Blanchett playing multiple roles and characters, sort of her doing Cindy Sherman, but actually acting it out.
Yeah.
And the texts that she performed, were all kind of art manifestos throughout the, say, 20th century. And she would do like one as a school teacher doing it. One was like a newscaster doing it. That was a really good one. Some of the locations shot around Berlin, I think, were really extraordinary.
So again, using the space of the Park Armory to really move the crowds through, so you would see different gatherings. And fascinatingly, this artist, Julian Rosenfeld, has also made this into a 90-minute normal film, which actually premiered at Sundance a month ago. And then right now at the Hirshhorn, we have the renowned Japanese artist Yayoi Kasama. And what's very exciting for this artist is that, again, this is a museum who's probably going to break all attendance records with this show. She made most of these works. She constructed what she called environmental installations, again in the 60s and 70s, and they were called infinity rooms. So here, just showing you a number of them. I think it'll be well worth it to go to the Hirshhorn. And right now, I just read an article that their membership is up 2,000%. So that's what immersive environments are doing for the museum world. And then we're going to play this video. I hope a lot of you guys came and saw the Pip Pilotta Riss, which was our exhibition over the winter time. It also broke all records in our 40-year history. So female artists at the museum. So we were very proud of this show. And again, one of the reasons we understood it to be so popular, besides having furniture and it being an Instagram phenomena, was this notion that, people really came in there and found their own ways of how to experience this work. Sometimes, one might call it superficial, but on the other hand, Pip Pilotta specifically said she was creating spaces so that the community could gather and that maybe there would be new connections made. And I was quite suspect of what she was thinking her work would do, and then completely, of course, mesmerized when it actually started to happen. And then this was on the 4th floor, where she encouraged everyone to lie on a bed and look at the screens that were attached to the ceiling. The next section is installations. Rain Room at MoMA. I think we all know what this was about. Here it's a backdrop for a proposal, so very immersive, very active, which made me think of, it happens at big sports stadiums, so that's a Knicks game. Anyways, and then in this case, you actually have done this experiment. This is called Famous Deaths. What is this about?
You put into a container like this, and there's sound, audio, smells, all that kind of stuff inside there that have to do with, it's kind of sick. I mean, the Kennedy assassination, Princess Di, quite a number of people. You're kind of in a black box, immersed in those moments.
And I mean, and did you actually have that experience of what was that experience like? That just looks very weird to me. And
yes,
and
it's kind of
done
weird.
by
And
the
it doesn't really
by the Dutch.
You're
This
not
is a
like
Dutch
coming
project.
out completely traumatized, as you probably should.
Okay.
But
yeah, here's another picture. I mean, it looks
there's the scent, the little canisters with scent.
So, I mean, and that's another interesting thing that keeps popping up, this notion of, I think scent has always been derided as something fairly insignificant within our 5 senses, but certainly in installations it keeps coming up. Okay, I'm turning this one over to you.
Over the holidays, I went to see some friends in Santa Fe, and I don't know, some of you probably know about this installation that George Martin helped support called Meow Wolf. He took over a bowling alley and built all the stuff in there and invited mainly local artists to take over different rooms, and the public comes in, you pay, and you kind of find your way through. So it's a little bit of a maze. If there's a story there, it wasn't apparent to me, but it's a really fun way to wander. This is, I think, a little video. This is like how you get from one room to another. You crawl. What's a video there, maybe?
A little video action.
There we go.
There.
This is how you get from one room to another. You crawl through this fire. You crawl through a fireplace. That was kind of one of the things that people would say, oh yeah, it's really cool. You crawl through a fireplace. And then in another room, I think there's going to, whoops. In another room, you crawl through a refrigerator.
There we go.
Yeah, you know.
We would call that just a bad renovation.
So it's
but
very
okay.
kind of fun ways. So we're supporting local artists, making this very immersive thing, hugely popular. A lot of people, a lot of whatever. Raises a lot of questions, but a lot of fun. People really enjoyed it, and they're gonna franchise it and do it in other cities.
I'm going to just quickly run through. I want to get to this one, which was, this was one of the more successful things I saw at Sundance New Frontiers with all the virtual reality installations that were going on. Hyphen Labs, Neurospeculative Afrofeminism. Essentially, though, let me break it down for you. Black female identity, you basically come into a beauty parlor, you sit down in a fabulous chair that swivels, and then with your headset, you are transformed into a virtual beauty parlor where you become a character who is spoken to by a guru. But again, something where what I was fascinated by was this notion of being able to combine both the physical and digital world, so it felt more seamless. Stage is really big for immersive. I think magicians have been doing immersive for a long time. They just didn't call it immersive. Who's this?
That's Kanye.
Yes.
So here's a little quote from the Economist. It's about mixed martial arts, which were just recently allowed at Madison Square Garden. It was outlawed there until recently. Fans played 17 million, a record gate for any event at the Garden. Anybody who knows these events, like there's a bad guy, there's a good guy, there's a kind of narrative. There are women, more than people watch it on TV, but in a kind of people, the performers, the wrestlers, whatever, jump into the audience. People watch it on TV, but really, really, the experience is to be had live, like gladiators. We have not moved much further than Rome. Music festivals, as some of you know, are really, really popular now. Musicians are making money on live performances. Live concert tickets in America more than doubled in the decade to 2015. Theme parks, etc., have all those things are kind of about physical immersion. Where are we here?
We're actually
where
at
are we right now?
Here Lies Love.
Oh, yes.
Sorry,
Okay, that's okay.
I can't seem to go backwards, but
this
Here Lies Love. This is really an immersive experience.
Yes, I did a theater piece, a show a few years ago at the Public Theater called Here Lies Love about Imelda Marcos. It's going to be restaged in Seattle next month, and it takes place in a kind of a fake disco. So when you as an audience member come in, you're standing, the disco music is playing, and the lights are turning, and all that kind of thing. And for most of the show, the actors perform on platforms around you, on the periphery. And then sometimes these kind of ramps come out, and they kind of move through the center. And then by the end, the performers are right there, mixed in with you, singing with you, and people loved it. There's a real story. This is the Marcoses who they won the election in the Philippines back in the 60s, and they became dictators, and they did horrible, horrible things. But at this point, they're running for election, and the audience fully buys into them and loves them, knowing fully well that these people are going to turn into, this is going to be a dictator and his wife. Her famous shoes are never mentioned because everybody knows that. This is another thing I went to at the Public recently. I had nothing to do with it. It's called The Fever, and as you saw, the audience sits around the periphery, and there's ringers in the crowd. somebody starts a little movement, and then somebody and then somebody else next to them does it, and pretty soon everybody's doing this movement. There's no instructions like do this, do this. It just happens, and then it evolves until people are following other people doing things like the next slide where you're in the middle. I think I got asked to do all this movement stuff in the middle. You'd think it'd be embarrassing and make you very queasy. They do it really, really well. It's a real skill to be able to involve people like that. There's Sleep No More, which probably a lot of you know. It's around the corner, and people do that. This is
That's this is
this is Secret Cinema. It's a British thing where they present well-known movies like Star Wars, or I think this is Shawshank Redemption, and you enter an environment that is like you've entered the world of that movie. And I think there's probably drinks involved too. And, and they pick all really, really interesting spaces. They charge top dollar. This is one. This is like you're in a scene in the movie, kind of. And it's kind of amazing. People love it. And then they show you a movie that you could probably watch on streaming for almost nothing. But people really prefer doing it this way. This is an amazing, amazing thing. You should check it out online. It's a Russian series of films. I think it's 13 films and some TV shows, none of which have come out yet. The way they were created was that they basically built a city, a science institute, populated and shot stuff over that was to take place in different eras, in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, during Soviet times. And in each one, they would populate this institute and the city with actors who had to basically fully live on the set, like thousands of actors living on the set. And it was a little bit like Big Brother. They would pick some who were like the story, but then everybody around it was just going about their business. None of these have come out yet, but I've talked to people who've seen some of them and said some of them are really good. This is...
Oh, yeah, talk about this.
You Me Bum Bum Train.
You Me Bum Bum Train.
This is another British immersive thing where it's a theater performance, I would say, immersive theater performance where there are hundreds and hundreds of performers and one audience member. You are the audience member. So you go in that one, you're on the wheelchair, you're on the dole, and you have to go and apply. I think it was the image before. It was based. The one image before was Secret Cinema, probably. Where and here's You Me Bum Bum Train. I think was another picture.
Yeah, this one.
The woman is suddenly thrown into a room with a bunch of football players. She's in the locker room. But there's other ones where you're thrown in. You're thrown into an operating theater and you are the doctor. And they're all around you and you go, you have to do this now. It's the financial model is ridiculous. What happens is people participate as the audience member and they love it so much they ask them, do you want to be one of the volunteers who are the performers next time? And they get hundreds and hundreds of people to go, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be one of the football players or whatever. So it goes on like that, and it's, yeah.
So one of the reasons why we've had that, what I would call the first chapter, and now we're going into the second chapter of this talk, Neuro Society, is I've been following this project now probably for a year. It's very fascinating, and so we wanted to contextualize something that David's been working on for several years, which finally is being prototyped and exhibited out in Menlo Park. But I think you're going to really run us through this project and explain something that I would clearly say fits all those four categories of what is truly an immersive experience. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, and there's the clicker. I even get the clicker. I press the green button. Some years ago, I was reading about what seemed to me very interesting neuroscience experiments that were taking place around the world, and some of them I thought, that sounds so cool. I would love to do that, and I'll bet other people would love to be the guinea pig as well and see what that feels like. This one is I did in Barcelona. You're put on, a motion capture suit. You're an avatar, and I became a small Spanish girl. Luckily, I know a little bit of Spanish. So, I'd look down and see my dress and my little Mary Janes, and then in the virtual world, in comes Mom. Mom, of course, appears to a little girl as a giant. And they have two different moms, a nice mom and a bad mom. So I'm pleading with the mom in Spanish, please be the nice mom. And it's pretty great. So I read about a number of these things, and I thought, very ambitious. The first idea was, can we put a few of them in an art gallery? And I got kind of more ambitious and said, can we do a bunch of them, like maybe 10 of them? So groups of maybe 10 people go through from one room to another, experiencing these things. It's enjoy kind of crazy experiences, and you learn something about yourself, your brain, and ultimately we kind of have a narrative. You start with perception, you go through cognition, and you end up with social. You end up how all your perception and your cognition affects how we interact with one another socially. It's very ambitious, but and still a work in progress. So the research was, I went to there's a place in New Jersey where police training happens, and you don't wear VR goggles, but you walk into a projection of an incident. And this is me, and you're interacting with people who come out and they're kind of behaving erratically, and somebody pulls a gun, and I got shot. They strap a taser to your butt, to the back, small of your back, so that when you get shot, that's me getting shot. I basically fell to the ground. I did not do the right thing, but it's pretty great. Also a one-on-one experience. But there's another one-on-one. This is a group out of Barcelona called Be Another Lab. And they do a thing with you in VR where you start to see me. That's me in the white, of course. But I'm seeing through her eyes. I start seeing her body. She's really good at mimicking my movements. So if I just move my hands a little bit, she does it too. And you really get the sense that, oh, that's me in the black dress and tights. That experience is the first one I read about. It takes place. It's in this. It was done by the Urson Lab in Stockholm. They published it in a scientific publication under the name Being Barbie. Now they didn't really use a Barbie doll, but it's a good title. And here's how it works. We do it. We ended up doing it, and it's running it in Menlo Park. People really like it. You're sitting on one kind of couch thing, and the doll is on the other. The doll, instead of having a head, it has two video cameras. So when you put on the VR goggles, it's live VR, and you're seeing the doll's body instead of your own body. And so when the scientist touches your foot and the doll's foot at the same time, you're seeing the doll's foot being touched, but you feel your own foot being touched by the wands. I think, to go back, maybe, I think we have, is that a video? No. It might have been video. It doesn't matter. Okay, I'm going to move ahead. This is a former car showroom on El Camino in Menlo Park, and that's where we did it. It looks like some creepy cult. But that's kind of the idea. There's a classroom where we worked up a version of an experiment that Alexander Todorov at Princeton did, where you're shown real political candidates in Senate races around the United States. Ones you don't know, that you wouldn't recognize. You're just shown two at a time, and two different parties, and you're asked which one is going to win. You see them for under 3 seconds, and you vote on your tablets. Almost 70% of the visitors get it right. They don't know anything about them. They don't know what parties they are. They don't know their platforms. They don't know anything. We don't know exactly. I was talking to somebody earlier. It'd be a little bit presumptuous to say, well, they voted because they're more handsome, or they're more pretty, or they're women or men. A lot of factors come in. But what you can say is that they voted based purely on appearance. Yeah. And you made a decision that affects your life based on 3 seconds of appearance, and it matches. Basically, you're told, okay, these are the people that actually won. We did a room that was set up like a game show. You walk in, you take a podium, and we do 2 different things there. We do kind of moral dilemmas where we show people clips of. We show them a scene from Star Trek where Kirk has to shoot McCoy to stop the Nazis taking over the world. And we ask him, how much damage would you do to McCoy? Would you kill McCoy, your fellow crew member and thespian? Or the answers are kind of interesting. Obviously, it's entertaining too, but they are real moral dilemmas. And we ask people to vote, and then we show them a curve of where they kind of went off. That their moral sense is, well, in a sense, relative. It's context dependent. We tried doing economic games in there, where you kind of offer people money and you trade off. We did it with these coins and tokens and stuff. To be honest, it didn't work, so we cut it. We cut it when we were in the testing phase, which was, we lost some money there, but that's what happens. This is the room where we reproduced the Barbie experiment. You go in and it looks like you've gone into some weird culty spa, which is, we like to think of it that way. The doll on the chair is hidden behind the curtain. And there's, obviously we have guides to talk you through it. And yeah, there's another room which you can't see the stuff here, but this is a phenomenon called equiluminance, where if you have equal color intensities and you eliminate lots of other black and white information, if you're only seeing color, you don't see motion and you don't see depth. We weren't able to stop depth, but we were able to stop motion. So we had like this little diorama in there with windmills turning and stuff. And when you saw it with just under this single color, the motion of the windmills stops. Then you put on these goggles that takes away the color thing, and you can see that the windmills are moving, and then you take them off and the windmills have stopped. And it's kind of like, no, this is not possible, but this is how your eye and brain works. Another room which we tested on Governor's Island, there was an experiment that a scientist in London did called Happy Feet. You put on these slippers that have microphones in them, and then you put on headphones so you hear the sound of your own footsteps, but then the sound is manipulated. We can make it sound big and deep and heavy, or we can make it sound light and tippy-tappy. And people, the way they move, we make a fake dance studio. We ask them to walk around in the dance studio. The way they move changes instantly. They don't realize it, but their friends do. Their friends laugh at them because their friends see how their movement changes. And they're like, what? The scientist wonders if there's a psychological change too. If making the sound making you walk like a troll, if that makes you feel heavier, a little depressed, a little sad, or anything like that, hard to tell. This was based on a thing that a Japanese scientist, Shimojo, did called Disco Disappear. And, well, it's like a disco room. You enter a disco room, and 2 people stand in the corners, and there's an object or a focal point in the middle. And the people disappear, and they pop in and out. It's because your eye will follow the motion of the the light things, and it's just a regular disco ball thing. And you can also do it with objects like cell phones and things like that on a spinning kind of Lazy Susan thing also with a pattern on it. This is one where we're doing a CCTV surveillance room where we're going to demonstrate change blindness, that if you are watching a scene, like a street scene, and there are things that distract your vision momentarily, you don't notice incredibly significant changes. There's a film that's online that you can probably see that was done, that's the same guy we're working with, where there's flashes every few seconds and something changes. It's a street scene, fixed camera, the car changes, the trash can changes, the awnings in the buildings change, and you notice maybe 10% of it. And then we rewind and go, this is everything that changed, and people kind of go, oh, geez. Okay, so this one, this is a little video, right? You can run the video. This is kind of the social part. We wanted to try and figure out, and we have not succeeded yet. These are like folks from Kickstarter who helped us out, because the Kickstarter people are really good at games. And they're also really interested in this topic. How do you get people to cooperate and with a common goal, manage a resource, a commons, in a way that is sustainable? There are places in the world where little villages around a lake have managed by themselves, without regulation or regulations that they come up with themselves, to manage the fish population of the lake, because it sustains everybody. So we thought, let's see if we can do that. So we thought we'd use ping pong balls for fish. And we haven't figured it out yet, but we're getting there. Our idea is to do it inside a glass box of some sort, where represents, say, the lake with the fish in it. And there's a drawing. I don't know if you can see it very well. I can sort of see it, yeah. So the participants kind of fish by reaching in or using gloves and things to get in there, and they fish, and then it goes into their own tanks and their own villages, and they get scores, and they can either if they overfish, bad things happen. The idea is to survive for a certain number of years, a certain number of rounds. Each round would be like a year. And if you overfish, obviously, there's a good chance that you will not survive. So it's a little bit like, there's board games like Catan and Pandemic and stuff like that have elements of that, but those take hours to play. We need to have this happen in 10 minutes, which we haven't figured out yet. So that's where this thing is. It's in Menlo Park. We did 3.5 rooms. The idea is to do 10 rooms and have it. And yeah.
A massive.
Yeah, massive thing, but
yes.
It's a lot of fun. And you kind of, as you can tell, you kind of get the experience of realizing these things about our perception, our social tendencies, etc., is on a different level than reading about it in books. Not only is it enjoyable and sometimes good for a laugh, but you internalize that knowledge in a very different way than if you just read about it.
So
I'm going to go. This is a little video we can play silently in the background.
Yeah. So that leads me to really kind of break down in terms of why the immersive for you in particular. I feel with this topic, you're coming from the angle of cultural production. I'm probably coming in from it more as cultural critique. I've been fascinated by the immersive because I see it as a fairly recent phenomena in terms of the way it's been marketed and branded. And I'm trying to understand if it's a generational thing. I'm trying to understand if this is a more potent experience than what we would call traditional cultural viewing, which tends to be one way. I flew up to Boston yesterday to go see William Forsythe with the Boston Ballet. David's like, oh, you're just seeing a lot of pretty people jump. And But for me, William Forsythe, an avant-garde contemporary choreographer, I felt that I had covered all of those areas where I felt transcended. There was definitely emotion. There was, for sure, intellectual nourishment. The only thing I wasn't doing was being active. I was sitting passively, and I really like sitting passively and being presented something that I could never in a million years do or see that kind of talent. So throwing it back to you, why do you think we're so captivated by immersive experiences right now? And why are you spending this project now probably in its third or fourth year? Why are you so committed to making this project?
Oh boy. As you said, as we both said, these immersive things have been around for a very, very long time. There's nothing that new about it, but it has kind of broadened out. So it's happening in art museums, in theater, whatever, in places where it wasn't as common in the past. It's kind of, and well, I think some of that is because we now have access to everything on our screens, instant access to everything on our screens, but it's a different order of experience. And so it actually increases the value of a unique experience that you can only have once, of an experience that you can only have with other people, a collective experience with other people. Those things, I have other kind of quotes and stuff about the value of experience as opposed to things, and kind of in the luxury goods and restaurants and vacations and all those things are kind of booming as opposed to people are buying less and less luxury goods. And I think that's, because they're thinking, this is something that means something in my life. It's not something to have, it's something to experience, and it extends into museums and theater and everywhere else. It's a very rich experience that they can also then talk about.
So I did want to open it up and have everyone join this conversation. So please, if someone wants to shout out with a question or a comment, and there we go, right there. Thanks.
The present absentness discussion has obviously been your music career, where you're coming from. I'm wondering if, the insights into perception, into multisensory experiences, as you've been doing with the society, are somehow going to flow into, a new musical experience, something like Stop Making Senses, or do you have anything like this in the pipeline that we can look forward to?
Not yet, but I'm trying to figure it out. It's a little tricky. I'm trying to figure out. There are people who have done collective musical things where a whole group of people like yourselves sort of collectively have a musical experience that they participate in. And I thought, I want to see if that's possible.
There's going to be a holdout. I think museums work quite slowly to decide if something is going to be deemed as part of the canon, and I think virtual reality is very much still in a nascent stage, if it will be accepted as quote unquote an art form. At the museum, we just commissioned 6 artists to make VR works, and the way we're presenting it is actually through a specialized app that you can download for free on your phone. But it is. I think one of the big questions is, okay, if all these music festivals, if Sundance are all looking at these immersive digital experiences, how are we going to design for them? Because no one has figured that out yet. Sundance, Tribeca, our experiences have been incredibly lacking, almost shoddy, and I feel there's a lack of respect for the people who are working in this area, and so hopefully folks like you guys who are UX designers are will really start to think about what is going to be the proper environments to make these works more respectful.
I have a question, like Pip Pilotta, economic question. Pip Pilotta Rist, who had the show at the New Museum. Okay, it's 2 questions. How does she make money on her work? Which is the question of who pays for it, who takes in, is there collectors who take things home and all that kind of stuff. And then I also want to.
We like to try to keep that all veiled, David.
I know. I'm not asking for all the details. I'm not asking for the details, but I'm wondering if that hinders people trying these things out, because it's a difficult financial proposition.
Absolutely. I mean, museums who are nonprofits do not pay participation fees. The way, obviously, a museum show is made is that there are a lot of philanthropists, the galleries. We make sure that there's a very healthy budget for those installations, those presentations to happen. Usually, it's the gallery's problem to figure out with an artist like Pip Pilotta, how do you generate income for the artist. In this case, there is a lot of videos that can be collected. There are large-scale photographs that can be collected. And in some cases, we do believe that certain installations now will be bought and then either presented in private foundations or in museums. But yeah, it's not easy for people who are working in immersive or in video. We're trying to help folks figure that out right now. What is that economic model for artists? I think, I mean, virtual reality is a good case in point. No one's figured that out yet, how to make money.
With the thing in Menlo Park, we charge, I forget,
$20.
$20 something. So it's not quite enough to pay for it, but that's the idea. That rather than having objects that are for sale, you pay as if you're going to the theater.
And that's actually running through the end of April?
I think so.
So if you're out there, if you guys get called out to headquarters, please go see it. Any other questions? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's an art gallery, Pace. Oh. Yeah.
Pace is an art gallery mainly based here. They happen to be doing these pop-up things. They did one next door to this with a Tokyo group called Team Lab. There was a lot of kind of computerized visuals that you walk through. And so this kind of fit in, and they said, yeah, let's try it out. And they thought people in the Valley are going to be receptive to the idea of art as experience as opposed to art as object.
Yes, so I mean, already you can see it trickling if a gallery, a blue chip gallery in New York like Pace is interested in art and technology and have invested in a space on the West Coast. I mean, it's coming.
Sorry, I know we're supposed to do the microphone thing. I kind of have a question that goes back to what you were saying right before, which is, I'm a writer here, and I also write books and video games on the side. And it's really amazing to be here and like write a few words and then millions of people read it. But I'm struggling with like I guess, doing my own thing where I can be a lot more experimental and do whatever the hell I want to, and coming here and doing things which are also really amazing, but they're what Sergey and Larry want me to. Thank you, Sergey and Larry. But I guess my question is, you have this amazing musical career, and you've done awesome things, and you've because of you, my 2-year-old knows all the words to Los Amigos Invisibles, which is incredible. But you're also doing these things which are also incredible and also a lot more bendy, but are getting exposed to a lot fewer kids in ghettos where I grew up. So how do you balance, or how do you decide, this is my crazy idea for today, this is who I'm going to try to bend it toward? Sorry, that was big.
No, it's a good question, and it's kind of hard for me to answer. In my career, I've been very lucky. I've also, I think, very early on, I think I sort of positioned myself that I'm not going to get pigeonholed. I'm going to allow myself some wiggle room. And I started doing music. I was already interested in art stuff, but I started doing music, so I started working with choreographers, with theater directors and film directors and stuff. So I thought always was very early on trying different things musically, and then could build on that. And I realized, I can kind of, the lucky part is that some of those things, I think what you're implying, some of those things bring in an income, and some of them not so much. Yes. And at the moment, I have the thing in Menlo Park is running. I'm probably not going to make anything from that. I have a theater piece running at the Public Theater now, and I get union wages for that, which is respectable, but it runs. They stop as soon as the show ends in a month or so. So there's finding that balance of income is not. That's a puzzle. It's a puzzle. I've been very lucky, but for emerging artists and creators, it's a real puzzle.
Well, it's our capitalistic value system where popularity seems to trump everything. I didn't want to use that word, but anyways, it's lopsided because one could argue this notion of when you're looking at immersive. Just as you said, it's the focus is on fewer people, but the experience is perhaps so much richer. So we have to figure out how to balance these things out and what kind of cultural and social impact they'll have on us. We'll take one last question before we break. Yes.
So ACT in San Francisco had to cancel their Here Lies Love staging, and I read that the Seattle one, they're trying to do it in a more traditional theater. How are you handling the keeping the soul of the show there while still staging it at a more traditional?
It's easy. There's a slight misperception. They are going to keep the show exactly the same with a dance floor and the moving platforms and the walkways and all that kind of stuff, but they're going to deck over all the orchestra seats in a conventional theater so that the stage and the orchestra becomes one big dance floor. So they keep the integrity of the piece, but the idea is they can then install it in the shell of a regular theater. And so if they can figure that out and make it work, then other regular theaters could do it, because we had a really hard time. We couldn't find a warehouse space or whatever in New York to move it into.
So that's a great place to end, since that kind of bridges this notion about the idea of being active and not as, from passive to active in terms of what's the difference of immersion. So thank you so much. Thank you, David, for coming out and being part of this talk. And thank you, everyone, for coming. I think I turn it back over to Anthony.
Thank you, David and Karen. That was wonderful. What a
glasses
great
that
way
look
to
like
start
my
the week. Thank you all for joining us. And I do want to extend the invite to join us for some wine, some hors d'oeuvres, and and any additional questions you have for these folks. Thanks again.